There is a pervasive myth in personal finance that young people are simply bad at managing money. The story goes that Generation Z and Millennials cannot afford to buy a house because they spend too much on avocado toast, fancy coffee, and new technology. Their parents look at them and say, "When I was your age, I just saved my money, bought a house, and built wealth." It feels like a moral failing on the part of the younger generation. It feels like they just lack basic discipline. But the math behind these two generational experiences is completely different. The underlying financial variables have shifted dramatically over the last 30 years. Today we are going to look at the mathematical reality of generational budgeting. We will see what happens when two people from different eras face the same financial milestones and why their budgets must look entirely different. Meet Daniel and Ryan. Daniel represents the older generation. He entered the workforce 30 years ago. Ryan represents the younger generation. He is entering the workforce today. To make the math fair, we are going to adjust everything for inflation. Both Daniel and Ryan earn the same inflation-adjusted salary of $60,000 a year. Both are 25 years old. Both are trying to follow the standard American dream. They want to rent an apartment, save up for a house, and eventually prepare for retirement. Daniel looks at his budget. His monthly take-home pay is $4,000. His rent for a standard one-bedroom apartment is $800, which is exactly 20% of his income. His company provides a traditional defined benefit pension plan, meaning his retirement income is completely guaranteed by his employer. His health insurance premium is fully covered by his company. He has plenty of free cash flow left over at the end of every month. Ryan looks at his budget today. His monthly take-home pay is also $4,000. But his rent for a similar one-bedroom apartment is $1,600, consuming 40% of his income immediately. His company does not offer a pension. Instead, they offer a 401k plan, shifting all of the investment risk directly onto his shoulders. His health insurance premium costs him $300 a month out of pocket. Before Ryan even buys a single cup of coffee, his fixed structural costs have completely devoured his budget. The first 5 years pass. Daniel is saving money effortlessly. Because his rent is so low, he easily saves $800 every single month. He puts this money into a basic savings account at his local bank. He does not need a complex budgeting app. He just uses a simple paper ledger. His financial life is incredibly stable and predictable. He knows exactly how much money he will have at the end of the year. By age 30, Daniel has effortlessly saved $48,000 in cash. He uses this money as a 20% down payment on a house that costs $240,000. His monthly mortgage payment is easily manageable within his budget. He feels successful. He truly believes his financial success is due purely to his own hard work, grit, and discipline. Ryan is experiencing a completely different mathematical reality. He is trying desperately to save money, but the friction is immense. Because his rent and healthcare take up almost half of his take-home pay, he only has a few $100s left for groceries, transportation, and basic utilities. To save even $300 a month, Ryan has to track every single penny. He downloads 3 different budgeting apps on his phone. He categorizes every single transaction. He skips vacations with his friends. He takes on a weekend side hustle driving for a rideshare company just to create some basic breathing room. After 5 years of intense, grueling, stressful budgeting, Ryan has managed to save $18,000, but the median house price in his area has skyrocketed to over $400,000. His $18,000 is not even a 5% down payment. Daniel looks at Ryan and gives him traditional financial advice. He tells Ryan to stop buying expensive coffee, cancel his subscriptions, and just save more money. Daniel genuinely believes that if Ryan just followed his simple paper ledger method, he would be able to buy a house. Daniel does not understand the massive hidden variable of structural inflation. He does not realize that housing, healthcare, and higher education costs have outpaced wage growth by massive, undeniable margins. Daniel's budget worked beautifully because his fixed baseline costs were exceptionally low. Ryan's budget is failing because his fixed baseline costs are overwhelmingly high. The math has fundamentally changed, but the advice has tragically stayed the same. By year 10, the divergence between them is undeniable. Daniel is now 35 years old. His house has appreciated in value significantly. His monthly mortgage payment is locked in and gets relatively cheaper every single year due to the effects of inflation. His pension is quietly growing in the background, fully funded by his employer. He has enormous financial security. He starts investing a little extra money in the stock market, but he treats it like a fun bonus. He does not actually need the market to survive. His retirement is guaranteed. He spends his weekends relaxing with his family. His monthly budget requires almost zero mental energy to maintain. Ryan is 35 and still renting his apartment. His rent has increased every single year, consuming more and more of his stagnant income. To keep up with the rising cost of living, Ryan has to constantly switch jobs every 2 years just to get basic salary bumps. There is absolutely no loyalty from his employers, and he can offer absolutely none in return. Because he does not have a guaranteed pension, he must fully fund his own retirement. He is forced to invest heavily in the stock market through his 401k. He has to spend hours learning about asset allocation expense ratios and market volatility. He is carrying the massive mental load of a professional portfolio manager just to secure a basic, dignified retirement. His budget is a highly complex web of automated transfers, multiple investment accounts, and side hustle income streams. He spends his weekends managing his finances and worrying intensely about the future. Let us zoom out and look closely at the systemic macroeconomic differences. The older generation benefited from a low-cost, high-security financial environment. They could easily afford to be financially passive. They could afford to make significant financial mistakes and still recover. A simple budget was enough because the macroeconomic winds were strongly pushing them forward. The younger generation is living in a high-cost, low-security environment. They are forced by the math to be hyperactive. They have to optimize every single dollar just to tread water and survive. They use sophisticated budgeting apps not because they are obsessed with modern technology, but because they have absolutely zero margin for error in their financial lives. When a millennial or Generation Z worker spends $5 on a coffee, it is absolutely not the reason they cannot buy a $400,000 house. The math on that claim is completely and utterly broken. If Ryan skips his $5 coffee every single day for an entire year, he saves $1,800. In that same year, the price of the average home might increase by $20,000 or even $30,000. The coffee is statistically irrelevant, but the older generation focuses endlessly on the coffee because it is a highly visible discretionary expense. They completely ignore the massive invisible structural costs that actually dictate the math of modern survival. This generational disconnect causes massive societal friction. It creates deep resentment between parents and children. It makes young people feel like they are playing a game that is totally rigged against them from the start. And mathematically speaking, they are absolutely correct. The difficulty setting on the traditional American dream has been turned up to the maximum level. The rules of the budget have fundamentally changed, and pretending otherwise only causes more pain. Let us dive deeper into the daily reality of this massive shift. Consider the concept of the emergency fund. For Daniel, building a 3-month emergency fund was a relatively simple task. His monthly overhead was low, and his job security was incredibly high. If he ever faced an unexpected expense, he had the cash flow to absorb it quickly. His emergency fund was a nice safety buffer, but he rarely felt a profound sense of panic about his finances. For Ryan, the emergency fund is a source of constant low-level terror. Because his rent is so astronomically high, a 3-month emergency fund requires saving $10,000 to $15,000 in pure cash. Saving that much money while simultaneously trying to fund a 401k and pay off student loans feels like an impossible mountain to climb. Ryan lives in a perpetual state of liquidity pressure. He knows that a single medical emergency or a sudden job loss could completely wipe out his entire net worth in a matter of weeks. This constant pressure fundamentally alters how he interacts with his budget. He cannot relax. He is always on the defensive. This leads us to the explosive rise of the gig economy. Daniel worked 40 hours a week and went home. His income was fixed, but his expenses were predictable. Ryan often works 40 hours at his primary job and then drives for a delivery service on Friday nights and Saturday mornings. He does not do this because he loves the hustle culture. He does this because the math of his primary salary simply does not cover his basic living expenses and his aggressive savings goals. The gig economy is not a sign of entrepreneurial spirit. For millions of young people, it is a desperate mathematical necessity. They are trading their limited free time and physical energy just to bridge the gap between stagnant wages and exploding fixed costs. Furthermore, consider the massive burden of student loan debt. Daniel attended a state university 30 years ago. He paid for his tuition by working a part-time summer job at a local hardware store. He graduated with zero debt. He started his career at a financial baseline of zero. Ryan also attended a state university, but tuition costs have surged by hundreds of % over the last 3 decades. Despite working part-time throughout college, Ryan graduated with $40,000 in student loan debt. He started his career at a massive financial deficit. Before Ryan even receives his first real paycheck, a significant portion of his future labor has already been claimed by the government or private lenders. His budget must accommodate a $400 monthly student loan payment. This is $400 that Daniel was able to save or invest. Over the course of 10 years, that $400 a month represents nearly $50,000 of lost capital for Ryan. When you factor in the lost compound interest on that capital, the true cost of his education is staggering. This is the invisible anchor dragging down the Millennial and Generation Z budget. The older generation often points to the technological advantages that young people possess. They argue that free investing apps, high-yield savings accounts, and fractional shares make it easier than ever to build wealth. While it is true that the tools are more accessible, the underlying capital required to use those tools is severely depleted. An incredibly sleek, user-friendly investing app is mathematically useless if your rent and student loans consume 90% of your income. Technology has lowered the barrier to entry, but structural inflation has raised the barrier to success. Daniel looks at his son and genuinely wants him to succeed. He offers to help him review his budget. They sit down at the kitchen table. Daniel points out that Ryan spends $100 a month on various streaming services and digital subscriptions. Daniel tells him that this is wasteful spending. He says that back in his day, they just watched network television for free. Daniel misses the entire point. Cutting the $100 a month will not magically materialize a massive down payment for a house. It will not pay off the student loans. It will only remove the small slivers of entertainment and joy that Ryan can actually afford in an otherwise oppressive financial environment. Ryan does not need budgeting advice from the 1990s. He needs a massive increase in his top-line income or a massive decrease in his fixed structural costs. Since he cannot control the housing market or the healthcare system, he is forced to obsess over his income. He job hops. He negotiates aggressively. He takes on multiple side projects. His entire identity becomes wrapped up in his ability to generate cash flow. The friction between the generations is not caused by malice. It is caused by a profound failure of mathematical empathy. Daniel evaluates Ryan's choices using the variables of the past. Ryan is making choices based on the brutal variables of the present. When the rules of the game change entirely, the winning strategy must also change. We must stop pretending that a simple paper ledger and a strong work ethic are enough to overcome massive systemic inflation. We must acknowledge that the younger generation is facing financial headwinds that their parents never had to endure. Once we accept the real math of the situation, we can stop the generational shaming and start having honest conversations about how to actually build wealth in the modern economy. Let us look at the psychological toll of this modern budgeting reality. When Daniel was 25, his financial life had a clear linear progression. You get a job, you buy a house, you work for 30 years, you retire on a pension. The path was predictable. It provided a deep sense of psychological safety. He did not have to constantly question if he was making the right financial moves. The system was designed to work for else.